All right, hey everyone. We're going to start the master copy, so I just want to go over the materials here. First, what I have is a Centurion 6x8 artist quality linen canvas pad. I get these at Jerry's Autorama. They're great. They come in 10 sheets, and they're great because you don't have to commit to a board. If it stinks, you just throw it in the garbage or burn it in a fire pit. I'm going to use a limited palette today. I don't want to use a full palette, so what I did was I'm going to use my titanium white, my ivory black, and then kind of just the basic colors here, an earth color and transparent earth red. Van Dyke brown, you can switch this out with burnt umber if you want to, but these days I've been playing around with this because I really love this color. I'm really not thinking too much about Carlsen's palette at this point. I'm actually going to do an Emil Carlsen, but I do want to keep it in mind. Next week, we're actually going to deep dive into like what the colors on the palette of these artists were. Cad Red Light, and then Ultramarine Blue, Yellow Ochre, and Cadmium Lemon. I could get rid of the Yellow Ochre. These would be all 3 high chroma colors, but I'm actually going to put that onto because I know Carlsen did use some earthy colors, a lot of earthy colors actually. He was a big fan of Emil Carlsen. Chardin. So, here we have my iPad set to 6800 Kelvin. That's something important. Also, it's additive versus subtractive light, 2 things to keep in mind when you're working from any kind of monitor. 6800 Kelvin is very bright, and it's also very blue. So you could adjust your settings. I'm going to just leave it, and I'm just going to work from it for this demo. But what I'd suggest is just, if you are going to work from something like this all the time, you may want to put and set your lights to about the 6800 Kelvin. You'll get just about the same one-to-one translation over. All right, so let's get started. Just take this. I'm going to work right on that board. Just leave it in here, and it'll just give me a nice firm surface. Do something like this. I'll actually tuck it under so that it will maybe not move while I'm doing this demo. There we go. Perfect. So the idea of this is to really do, maybe like a 6x8 study. You could do a little bit bigger if you want to, but what we're going to do is just do a test. We're going to be playing with the colors that we have in our very limited palette. I suggest doing something very similar. And what that will do is give us the ability to, see what Carlsen used. And if our small palette can hit them, and then from there we can gauge and then build our palettes out. We're going to try to do some research here and find out what each artist did use. If you can't, because it's not always available information, that's when we can try to kind of piece it together. There's also, something nice about just using your palette and then trying to translate it over that way too. So there's many different ways to tackle why we're doing what we're doing, but I'm going to just start here by putting out some colors. Let me pull this over just a little bit. Take that cover off. I'll put it right here. That way we can get just in full shot. Little ivory black. I put the Van Dyke brown out. Van Dyke brown's nice, especially this one, new color that I'm trying. These are just great places to try out different colors and palettes. Limiting your palette to see what you can get, because let me put that out. You'll see what the color does. We don't always know when to grab it, or somebody says this color is fantastic, and then you put it on your palette, you don't know when to use it. So I'm trying to group the colors all together at this point, but yeah, putting them out and then testing them one by one is really a good way to see how they work. Ultramarine blue. My job is not to make a mess here, even though I'm going to. Let me pull this over a little bit more into here. There we go. So I'm going to take a little bit of mineral spirits, and first what I'm going to do, boot up my monitor here. Always have a rag in hand too. I'm actually just going to keep this right off screen because it wouldn't benefit anyone to see a screen. So I'm going to put the image on the side. All right. So what I'm going to do is just start by a little bit of, let me grab a rag. raw Van Dyke and some mineral spirits, and just kind of warm up here. So what I'm going to try to do is just get the drawing really quick. And it doesn't have to be perfect here. Let me just tape this down because it's moving. There we go. Now it's not going to move. All right. So what you can even do is just, if you want to, put it right next to, and then try to see if you can do a 1-to-1 in size. So what I'm going to do is just start to draw it in a little bit. You know, the umbers are fantastic for this because they'll give you a underpainting quickly, and then you can kind of work into the base. It's one of the beautiful things about working wet into wet. So just going to try to eyeball it here at the beginning. It's okay if it's not perfect. It's not what this exercise is about. It's about taking it for a test drive, just like we do when we're doing a poster study for a painting, or at least the way I like to think about them. All right, take that. Dark moment there. You can think of lights and darks. You can think of for structure. I'm thinking almost like tonally at this point. So what that means tonally is really just I see a dark and I see a light. I can kind of gauge them together. This is the biggest component in this. That could be a little bit too big. Not concerned yet. Just get all this stuff in. Using a flat brush too. Just a Treckel number 2 Legion. Top of that, the bottom. Need to see things in relation to each other across the picture. Meeting this line. As it comes over, all this information is below it. I can see that I didn't make room for the orange or lemon, really. That's why it's easy, good, nice and loose right now, so I can always kind of work into it. Don't worry about the drawing. It's not about transferring over a perfect drawing at this point. Just go for it. It's a nice skill to have, too, to be able to kind of work directly. I find that so much about working directly gives me confidence about working indirectly. Beautiful thing to me about raw Van Dyke Brown is just that the properties of it is very neutral. All right, and then if I want to think of just value, this has to be dark. It's almost like a burnt umber. That's the lightest. This is pretty light. Don't want to go too light. Remember, this is just a test to kind of, you know, to warm up. It's not so much make it look exactly like the Carlsen. Of course, we're going to try, but not a big deal if it's a version of it that's pretty close. So we're really beautiful reflection here. There. There's a little bit of the background there. A lot of beautiful subtleties in Carlsen's work. Now the nice thing also about like iron oxides, this is actually manganese brown. This Vandyke brown. Not all of them were. They used to be Castle Earth. NR8. This is PR8. Slightly different, but nearly neutral. It is in the red family, which is why I put them together to kind of associate them. Very, very subtle. Very, very subtle red. There we go. Now we can kind of see the picture. I can gauge it even more. All right, so what I'm going to start to do here is just mix some colors. And I'm going to start with the background. Maybe lock in this area right here where I have light versus dark in the reference. So let me just grab a little bit of ultramarine blue. Actually stand this up. There we go. All right. So let's take ultramarine blue and a little bit of yellow ochre. See, you get that low chroma green. And we're going to introduce a little bit of ivory black, then bring it over here with the, there we go. So I don't think I'm going to be able to hit the note, which is fine. And that's part of the reason why we're doing this, is really to kind of take a just test in here to see what he was able to hit, to then go back and start to almost like reassess and then say, are there any colors on my palette that could get me closer to the Carlsen? I'm just going to leave in some nice flat strokes here as I tighten up the drawing. There we go. So you can see his is a little more towards the green side. There we go. Liven that up a little bit towards the orange side. That's what I meant. So it could be a raw umber. It could be this transparent earth. I do believe at the time they had Mars colors, so. Think of that, these two in relation to one another. Again, it's fine to kind of move through the painting or lock into a section. It's whatever you need to do to make the painting work. All right, let's take some titanium white and get some color in there. Grab a little of that. Oh, beautiful. Look at that, almost like gray. Get some color in there. Don't have to go too crazy with like making it for me or anything. really just studying it. That's the beauty of this kind of recreation. Just studying the color, seeing how he made some of the decisions, or the artist did, depending on who you choose. Go. Not about perfection. Keep that in mind. Even the next step is not going to be about perfection either. It's really, I'll show you examples along the way too, but interpreting the information is always good. Coming in with an idea of what you want to do with it too is definitely important. Meaning, what are you trying to get out of the master copy? Could just be, I want the picture to hang in my house. Of course, that's always fun. But it could be something else, like I want to see how he did a background, and then I'm going to be studying the colors as I recreate it. Like I said, there's just almost like nothing better than recreating the painting to see how he did it, and then seeing if you can kind of solve the problems the same way. Also find that putting a umber down too, it gives you a little more for the paint to kind of grab onto. So using that background there as a gauge now out of this to go this way. All right, let's go this way. Get this in. Really finding these together, nice dark. There we go. Let them come together and make the judgment of did you hit the note? And I wish we could go and kind of see these in person. That would be like the best, really the best way to do it. He's got just a touch of like a reflection in the top there. And then just ever so slight. There we go. So what I'm going to do is just kind of build out of this. I still think, it's not perfect here, but it should be helpful for studying Carlsen. One of the best ones I think I've seen is the John Singer Sargent copy he did of Velasquez, where it's a version of it. It's not like he was trying to do his painting, which is definitely, you could make it look exactly if you wanted to, of course. I would use different methods. Of course, that's what we're going to do more for like the next step. Also softening an edge, bring two colors together. This is where we have the ability to really play here. Feels like it goes more towards yellow over here, and yellow into yellow earth, or orange earth. There we go. Still almost like green as the base. This reminds me of like Albert Herder had some beautiful earthy tones like this too. Sit back. All right, let's get the lemon in there. That's one of the reasons why I actually put this cadmium lemon out, is I just knew I just can't hit that note without it. So that's one of the things that we're going to be gauging here as we move through the painting, is just, can I hit the note, and if not, is there a color I can think of that I can add onto the palette? Of course, you can add your own palette if you want to and use whatever you have. That's a good way to kind of interpret color. A color of a master. See, something like that is just good enough for that. Right there. All right, let's get a little this. Gauging these two, there's a coolness. See a touch of cool in this. Just a touch. A little of that ultramarine. Bring it over. And again, this is your playground. You get to play with it if you want to. Play it up. But you can see kind of the decision making too as you're doing it. All right. Like, why did Carlsen choose to make this one cooler? Perhaps he saw it, or perhaps he didn't. Just so much questions arise out of the master copy. Go for dark over here. All right, the top of that. Bring that over. Bottom of that. Dark moment. Over here. Beautiful thing about posters that I just absolutely love is that right there. That's a bottle, right? That's how I'm articulating a bottle. That I can just pop on a highlight and it may start to feel like one. So you start to begin to understand the power of suggestion and how all of these components kind of need each other, but to what degree, meaning that I can get the shape of the bottle and the highlight, and it could be enough for somebody to be able to read this as a highlight without having to, as a bottle, without having to render everything. So it's a beautiful thing, the poetry of it. Seems like it lightens over here. It moves towards the bottle. Scrub some of that background. There we go. playfulness of the strokes. That's where you can really think about some of the variation here. You can see this now movement from light to dark as it moves this way. So you start to like study it, and then you see these small little things that are just beautiful. The one thing I don't think I'm going to use is a CAD red light, which in his day I'm pretty sure he used vermilion, but I have it on just in case as a note. But again, that could be a thing that I'm going to question the whole time. If I find myself not using it, I do this actually on my palette all the time too. If I find myself not using a color, I may take it off. Which is why I'm always playing with like colors on a palette, or adding or subtracting. There's something beautiful, of course, about trying to say more with the same amount with less. Meaning, can I get a beautiful painting with a limited palette? I just push that a little towards the cool side. No need to go crazy here and render too much. That's kind of like, that's what I want to do. Of course, I'm going to refuse to do it. If anything, you can time yourself too, which will keep you moving. So you don't sit and make a perfect little beautiful painting that's a copy, a tiny version of it. It's really just the exploration phase right now that we're going to be doing in this first step. Right. So then as I get a little more, again, don't get crazy descriptive here. So that's really what we're going to be doing that for this first week. Just let's get a nice poster study done and just warm up to the painting which you're inspired to paint. Imagine it being the one you want to hang on your wall. It's a good place to start. All right, so I took a little bit of a break, so I'm ready to go round 2 here. I'm going to actually go this way and get some of this in, and then maybe come back to some of this and just fill it in. So it's good actually to take a break. You can come back, see if things are too light or too dark. And first off the bat, I feel like this is perhaps a tiny bit on the dark side. So I'm going to just bring it into the light a little bit. Now, the thing about coming back and adding to what was already there is that the paint, sometimes it sets up, so it may have a different feel to it. I can always go back, reestablish that highlight. That actually gauges for how dark I can go here, or how light I can go with this form. But you can bring just a light value right up to it. And as long as it can read, then you're pretty good. I'm not going to fuss with it too much because, again, it's more about doing this test run through the picture than it is about making everything perfect. So, of course, trying to do a good job here, but always keep in mind this is just a test. Almost like if you play any sports, like going out and playing or testing the court before you're going to play on it. It's not about winning, it's about warming up. So this is very, very important, I think, in terms of, getting a sense of all the elements. Not about perfection. And I see some information in there. I don't have to particularly get everything. So you can pick and choose, especially on a poster study. I'm not trying to get super detailed either. Just, there we go. Get a little note of something back there. But then also help to see that this is a dark value right in here. Do a little test. Get it dark in there. Then I'm going to go for it in here. Just with right in there. There we go. And again, sometimes it's like you get more information and you can see the picture, which is what's important. It's actually a good lesson in making paintings, pictures, really, is that it's for the picture. It's not for the object. The object may be, think of it like music, maybe the reason why you put the composition together, but it's the interaction of the objects that really pull that down. That really is probably what makes it sing. Go on. You can do a little drawing if you need to. A moment pulls right through there, right into the background. It's like a little coolness. Now, Emil, I believe, painted under natural light. So I can almost like start to make predictions on, some of the decisions. You're really almost like trying to get in the mind of the artist when you're doing them. At least that's what I'm shooting for. Why did the artist make this decision? I don't think it's always just copying. I think sometimes it's, leaving things not fully realized so that the star of the show is the star. So let me get a little of the background over here, and then I'll come back and do the rest of this. Because this works right now, but it feels like it could be a little bit on the dark side. So I'm going to just pull a little bit more. Then got to remember to warm it. So now it's like making that neural connection of the colors and what I was pulling for this over here. So right in there, it's like just a play of these colors, the dabbing of the brush. We're going to play with some mark making, of course, as we try to recreate some of this information too. Go. Come back over here. Touch of blue. Right down and through here. Up. What I can do is grab that, come right over and use the edge there to get the edge. Go. So using all aspects of the brush. Good thing about working this way too is you get to see how much I am using the mineral spirits to really clean the brush. Cool, right there. Go. And there's like a beautiful roll here. And again, it feels like it just cools. Just cools right there. Little ultramarine. Beautiful thing about having this very limited palette is that I have one blue. Well, maybe two. I mean, ivory black is sometimes. It depends on what it's surrounded by, but it even on a flesh palette like the Zorny palette, you can use that as your cool. Go. So that's, I could keep going with this and render it, but I just don't think that's not necessary. All right, let's get some of this. Draw it. This is where ultramarine. Down through here, go in. Beautiful, beautiful neutrals with Van Dyke brown. All right, just pull that over. Work on those ellipses. Not easy to abbreviate either. There we go. Good there. All right. Feels pretty good. Let's get some of the ground in. I'm going to refine this, and then it's going to start to pull together, I think, a little bit. I mean, it's starting to look pretty good. So, feeling pretty good about the poster. But let's see if I can get just a little bit more. Let's grab that. Neutralize this yellow ochre. What an awesome color. I think Van Dyke Brown's going to make it on the palette. Go. Just pull it right through. Pull it right over to here. That's the Michael Harding Van Dyke Brown. A little different than Gamblin's. Gamblin, I think, is a convenience mixture. Harding's is, as I've said, manganese brown. There we go. Right. Let's get that peel in. I think that's going to help. That seems to be the highest chroma in the whole painting. Which is why sometimes when I'm planning, I'll look at that and say he definitely had a bit of chroma, at least, in the planning of this. I think a CAD... knowing the time frame that he painted, I don't think he used, like some of the impressionists were using chrome yellow, which is a lead. I believe a lead. I don't believe he was using it though. I have the research and you'll all see what his palette is. But that is the fun part of really looking into finding the notes of these artists to really see what they had to say. I think there's just so much in, really getting in there and seeing why they did what they did, and the palettes that they used. Really kind of like dorking out, I'd say, in a sense. A note there. All right. And just warm hint right there. And then there we go. There. And just a hint at the bottom. Right. Let's get that edge to roll a little bit. Neutralize. Low chroma. Feels like my Benedict Brown is going to be acting as my low chroma, almost like my neutral scale, which is why I do love it. Kind of neutralize mixtures by doing that. But you can just get a little test like that just to see. Do I need to pump up the color a little bit? Let's see. Sometimes it just takes putting a little swatch of your first guess what you think that color is. There we go. Feels dark. And then sometimes it's nice to then go back in and do a little wet into wet technique. Because you're mixing basically on the canvas at that point. And then this is lower in contrast between them. So that tells me this can get a little darker. There we go. Always gauging as you put a mark down. You see a little bit more. I think of it almost like a jigsaw puzzle. You can see how much I moved to once everything tightened here. Right. We got just a little bit of probably some chestnut or kumquat or something. Right there. Right there. There we go. I mean, it's not Carlsen. Carlsen's Carlsen. But it's an extraction, and really what we're doing is we're trying to see if we can take information to bring into our paintings. Go. I think, to me, that's the exercise. It's really, what can I take from this that can help influence my own paintings, my own work, without just doing versions of Carlsen. Like, I don't want to just go buy a jug like this and then set up a lemon. Be inspired by them, but I don't think do versions of their paintings. I think there's Dean Cornwell quote. I'll probably put it in the presentation. Just think you gotta find the authentic voice, your voice. Nothing wrong with having like a ode to a master, I think. But I think Cornwell's quote was, don't do versions of others' paintings. Be inspired by the ideals that they put in the work. Soften that edge. See if I can. Brought too close there. Now I'm gonna just go back. There we go. Not quite, but still reads as a contrast now. It's good. All right, let's go back into here, get that top plane. There. just the same one brush the whole time too. The Impressionists were known for using flat brushes too, so I wouldn't say this is all that far. Of course, a tiny little study like this, but I may use flat brushes on the bigger one. Probably will. That's where digging into, any reading that you can on the artist is always good. See short shadows like this. It tells you that they were painting in natural light, ton of ambient light. Go. Soften that a little bit. Warmth up in the shadow. All right. Lighter. The other thing is, Carlsen didn't use titanium white. I believe Carlsen died, can't remember, perhaps 20s. But I think it was somewhere like 1919 when titanium white really was distributed and manufactured. So he wouldn't have used it. So it'd be weird. It's fine if you want to use it when you're doing the bigger one. Of course, lead white was what a lot of the old masters used. Carlsen was using, I think, zinc white at the time. And zinc was kind of like the interim white between lead white and titanium, before titanium really took over, and now it's just the most common white. Although some people use lead because they're all different properties. Every paint has different properties, something to keep in mind. I find it funny when people say that they don't. They absolutely do. Every color has its own set of properties. So you want to try them out. It's like naphthol red looks like, cadmium red, but I hate naphthol red. I just wouldn't use it personally. If somebody does, that's fine. I think everyone should make their decisions, but to say that like naphthol red is the same as cadmium would just be, I think, blasphemy. Totally different mixing properties. Of course, it depends on how you paint too. If you were talking about painting as a whole, I would definitely say they're all different. But if you're painting very, very thin, perhaps they're very similar. But a lot of the times, it's in the context which you hear these things that, like, we're talking about an impressionist or something. So, that's not the best, but it is what it is. Golden that up a little bit. There we go. All right, and what makes that pop is the shadow there. Go. You can see the contrast over here. It gets tighter than it is over here. So there's like a bunch of tiny little subtle things going on. I'm sure Carlsen, of course, knows what he's doing. He's intentionally doing it. And the question for us is why? Because contrast really leads the eye. So he's trying to pull us over here and make this a little more passive, even though he has these kind of directional things here. Makes it beautiful. Is he really, painted simple objects, but put complexity into the way in which he's describing them. Beautiful, beautiful work. Definitely one of my faves. So you can see the contrast here is just too high. I'm going to now bring it closer. And this study is really my first pass to be gathering information too. Like noticing things like that. There we go. Shadow over there. Shadow in here. Those together a little bit and then pull that out. And it reads as a clothy form. It doesn't have to be perfect. This is not about perfection. This is about, as I've said many times, just gathering data. First run through. Let go. Cool. So you can see that feels a little hot. Also, as I render this information, I'm going to be reminded of it being a little bit too hot, having to kind of cool it, which is why it's good to test the field out in that sense. There we go. Backside. Get that described. All right, now I'm going to go up here and get a little bit more of this, and then getting close to being done here. Enough for the first go around with the picture. For the poster, I think it's good. It's enough information for what I'm looking for. Bottom side in here. Can't forget that. Right down there. Definitely has that like little crevice shadow at the bottom. Right. And then just nice and dark, low chroma, green. See, as I add that, it gets too chromatic, so I'm going to lower that chroma. You can see that there's probably mostly low chroma yellow in there, like yellow ochre. That's what I would gather. Maybe a touch, hard to say, of chroma, and that's what I'm going to be looking for as I look for his palette, what colors he used. I don't think we're going to find all the palettes, which is fine. So sometimes it's even good to look at who the artist studied with. And then you could probably take some guesses. as to like what was available at the time. Could have been like a burnt sienna he was using, or transparent earth, which is what I'm using. Mars colors were around at this time too, so you never know. That's why these are just invaluable. You kind of start to see it together. All right, bring this over. Clean that brush up. Actually, maybe I'll do over here first. Seems to be like a little bit of a grouping, almost like some grapes or something right there. I can describe them just with a flat color and then go back in and draw some of them. Doesn't have to be perfect. And then now let's get this in here. Right there, dark moment. Draw up into it. So this over here is almost echoed here. See if I can pull some color in to see if I bring them together a little bit. All right, the last little go here. Nice and blobby over here. Not too descript. You start to see these like rhythms that he's putting in here too. So this shape is also right here. Then he's also putting a couple over here. So study it compositionally as well. Keep in mind just that flying over, that line right in the back. So I think I'm going to drop that a touch. There we go. Almost there. Open one up down here. Scrub it in. Get a little base and then lighten it up with just a touch. A little green in there. that feels pretty good. I mean, I could keep going if I wanted to, but I don't think it's worth it. And if I were to mount this and like keep it or something, I'd probably crop it right down there. So just cut it in. But you know, that's good. Let me just add a couple more marks here just to get rid of some of that white. But that should help, you know, with what to do this week. Really just spend some time and figure out, do I want to make it all the way through this painting? It's just the one. Better off to kind of do a small little study than to go through a whole painting and say, maybe I wanted to do another one. You can do a couple of these too if you have time. Do as many as you want. I think these are fantastic, even just to keep around the studio. I think they're a great way to kind of study composition too, from all the masters. And when you go up in your studio and you want to do something and you're not quite sure what to do a little poster study of a master's work. Just see how, you know, study their colors, see how sometimes limited their palette is. Pretty incredible. Especially old masters, a very small palette, or portraits. I did a Fragonard recently and it was very tiny color scheme of what he was using for his skin tone. You kind of tell. So all right, that's it.